Folks, it's your buddy Mike Messier. I'm here with your early week surprise video. Didn't plan on coming on, but so many things are happening in our world. Uh, I'll make a quick mention of this NBA Finals. Celtics and Golden State Warriors might have a really good series this year in the finals. Two high-profile teams, Boston Celtics, probably along with the Los Angeles Lakers, the most heralded franchise in the NBA over the years, and Golden State in the last 6 or 7 years have put their name in the basket for a top team, winning 3 out of 4 championships a while ago, uh, defeating LeBron James across two teams for LeBron. Durant came in for a cup of coffee and left. I know a tinge of sports news. I'm not the sports expert, but I know enough to have an intelligent conversation and to have a take. This seems like it's going to go 7 games. I'd like to see the Celtics win. I don't know if they will. I think, guys like Steph Curry over there for Golden State and the coach have so much experience in these high-pressure situations. But I will predict Boston to win in 7, just to be a nice guy. But I think it's going to be tough, and it could go either way. But did watch the game last night, and I watched it to fruition. I watched the entire thing. I jokingly said to the person next to me that, the Celtics were kind of quitting in this game when they had two white guys on the court. And then 10 minutes later, they had 3 white guys on the court. So, they were pretty much submitting the victory in game 2, but they were happy to have game 1. So what's next? So I didn't watch the Hell in the Cell show, but I want to get to that in a minute. I want to talk about the Hell in the Cell, Cody Rhodes pectoral. This is kind of a hybrid. On my channel here, I typically like to do Mike's Instant Movie Reviews, but I've realized that some of the movie theaters I go to, because of the way this streaming service is set up here, I can't do a Mike's Instant Movie Review in live time at certain locations. So I saw this movie that I'm glad I did see, Jazz Fest, a New Orleans story, kind of in the tradition of Summer of Soul that won the best documentary from last year, a movie that I actually saw in the theater. The movie Summer of Soul will always be tied to the slap because of Chris Rock and unfortunately getting slapped by Will Smith. So that movie, Summer of Soul, was last year, and that was a great movie. This movie feels very similar in some ways because it's still a music festival. It's more, I guess you could say, contemporary because this thing has happened now 51 times, the New Orleans Jazz Fest. It's interesting because I did enjoy the movie quite a bit. I mean, I had a tear in my eye here and there. You had Earth, Wind, and Fire. You had Herbie Hancock. You had the Marcellus family. Some other people that I didn't know were such a big part of this thing. Jimmy Buffett, the Parrot Head himself. Who else? Katy Perry showed up with her big boobs and everything. You had all these interesting artists. Bruce Springsteen made an appearance. Paul Simon, although he was barely in it. Then you had guys like B.B. King, Gary Clark Jr., Al Green. Interesting to see him. Tom Jones. Samantha Fish, I'd never heard of her before. She's quite alluring. Some of the talking heads like Quint Davis and the Marcellus brothers, and some of these guys I knew a little bit about, but not a whole lot. So overall, I liked the movie. But here's a problem I had with the movie. Even as I was watching it, even as I was enjoying it, for the first hour and 10 minutes or so, and the doc was only about an hour and 35 minutes, but for the first hour and 10 minutes, it seemed very repetitive. A lot of the talking heads, and it wasn't a talking head documentary. By that, I mean when they just have a head and someone talking, kind of like what I'm doing here. But in a documentary, you want to interslice that. You want to edit that with concert footage and other things, graphics, whatever. But some of the talking heads were very repetitive in this film. Everybody was kind of saying the same thing, how great New Orleans Jazz Fest is, and this is a cultural community event, and everybody comes and everybody dances and eats. And there was a whole big segment on the food at this festival. That looked pretty alluring. The shrimp po' boys and the Cajun food, everything looked very alluring. But I was waiting for the conflict. Where is the conflict in this story? I started making stuff up in my own head because the movie started to feel more like an advertisement for the festival than an actual documentary. It was so babyface in nature, so positive. And I get it. I mean, it's a music festival. It's not a nuclear war. So sure, it should be positive, but there's got to be some conflict in order to make this thing interesting. And in this particular movie, there was really little conflict. And for most of the movie. And I'm thinking in terms of, well, maybe the ticket prices. I mean, can you talk about the ticket prices? How much does it cost to get into this thing? I'm sure in the 70s, when this started, it was, affordable for everybody because they showed a guy, one of the early promoters, saying that the tickets were like $2 for adults and $1 for kids for the jazz festival in the first year of the thing back in the 70s, first or second year, something like that. But now it's like, I'm kind of wondering how much does it cost for these tickets? And I kind of, for whatever reason, I was interested in the breakdown. Do people buy a pass for the whole week-long festival, or where do people stay? I mean, they said that 100,000 people at any given time could be in this New Orleans Jazz Festival. Let's talk about the audience. That's a lot of people. Where do they all stay? Is there enough infrastructure in New Orleans to contain these people? Or do they tent? I'm just kind of curious on some of the technical issues because, like I said, the movie became very repetitive. Everyone just saying how great it is, blah, blah, blah. And but then right when I was about to kind of throw my arms up in disgust at the lack of conflict in this documentary, boom, Katrina. They go back to 2005. And I think this is where the real story was. And I guess if it had been me, which it's obviously not, but if I had a say in the creative direction of this documentary, I probably would have put the Katrina stuff earlier, and I probably would have made it a bigger point of the film. In fact, I think that's probably the most interesting aspect of the whole doc is how, you've had this festival going on, I guess at that time for 35 years or so, back in 2005. And then this horrible Hurricane Katrina wipes out New Orleans. And just a couple of months later, this jazz festival is scheduled, and the town and the festival organizers and some of the big name celebs, like I mentioned, Bruce Springsteen and Paul Simon and Jimmy Buffett, they all came out to support New Orleans. And, Bruce Springsteen had just written this song, My Town of Ruins, which he said was actually about his own hometown of Asbury Park, but it seemed to apply to the situation in New Orleans at the time. And the crowd is singing along, and it's like the first time he's ever performed the song and so forth. So I thought that was pretty interesting. But I felt like it should have been earlier in the documentary. I felt like it should have been earlier, and it should have been more discussed, I guess. And then it kind of went right back to babyface mode. And then at the very end of the documentary, when they do the postscript, the words, because most of the documentary, I think, was filmed in 2019 when they had the 50th anniversary of the Jazz Fest in New Orleans, or the New Orleans Jazz Festival, however you want to say it. But then they said in 2020 and 2021, the festival was canceled, due to the worldwide situation. And I found that to be sad. And then they said, but triumphantly returned in 2022. So there you go. Overall, like I said, there's definitely the music in this film. It's almost like I'd rather have a box set or some type of, CD of the best music from this thing, the Earth, Wind, and Fire, the Marcellus family, seeing the dad. I mean, I remember, was it Wynton Marsalis or Branford Marsalis was on the Tonight Show with Jay Leno, the band leader for a while, early on, and then he left. He was kind of replaced by Kevin Eubanks. But the Marcelluses, all these people, I like to hear the music, and I did like the doc. I'm not going to tell you I didn't like it. I just feel like it could have been better. There could have been more conflict, and the conflict could have come earlier in the film. And like I said, a lot of the talk in this movie was very repetitive, and some of the aspects that maybe just I would find interesting, like the ticket prices and the marketing of this thing and where do people stay in town and all that good stuff, I would have liked to have seen some of that technical stuff instead of just the overwhelming amount of people saying how great it was over and over again. Okay, but that's just me. I mean, yes, I have won 11 awards for Disregard the Vampire Mike Messier documentary, and I've done some wonderful things in my life too, but that's not about me right now. It's about this. So now we're going to cut to our wrestling portion of the live stream. I put out a call. People can comment, but nobody's commenting here. But as far as this Hell in a Cell pay-per-view last night, what did I think? Okay, here's the deal. Because I was watching the Celtics game, I did not watch the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view in live time or network special or premium event or whatever you want to call it. And I kind of forgot the thing to do in that situation is if you have a computer or a TV with your Peacock account, I guess the thing to do to trick the system is go in, start playing the pay-per-view when it starts, and then just push the pause button or some such thing. And maybe that'll work because the way that this Peacock thing works, you can't really just watch a replay or hop in any time. You're kind of like stuck in whatever Peacock wants to do. So if you try to watch the pay-per-view starting 2 hours late or whatever, you're kind of screwed and you have to wait. In this case, I waited pretty late at night or into the morning, but they didn't have the replay available, for me at least, until I checked this morning. So I did watch it this morning. I try to avoid the spoilers, but it's modern day society. I get a fucking message on my phone from Reddit, of all things, and just some fuck wrote something like, I have to tip my hat to Cody Rhodes last night. So I'm like, okay. So I guess Cody did something of importance. I had heard about the pectoral injury, the muscle injury. This is really the story of this show. I mean, my friend Shane McKenna of the Wrestling Fans Facebook group went to this pay-per-view live or this network special. I have to see what he has to say. But for me, this was kind of turned out to be like a 1.5 match show with the women's three-way match being the other one. Hey, Eric, what's going on, buddy? I'm discussing the Hell in the Cell that I just watched this morning. I know it was on last night. Our buddy Shane McKenna from Wrestling Fans went to it live, Eric, but I watched it this morning, basically. And, I found that the opening segment or the opening intro, as WWE very often does, they did a nice job recapping the heat or the story between Seth and Cody. And, the storyline there is that Cody has beaten Seth twice, and now they're headed to the cell. And I kind of like the fact that there was only one Hell in the Cell match on the show last night, because when they've kind of force-fed like 2 or 3 Hell in the Cell matches on one pay-per-view, it all loses credibility. You're right, buddy. And as a matter of fact, Eric, I was watching No Mercy 1999, believe it or not, just because I wanted to see the Jeff Jarrett China Good Housekeeping match. And it's just like you got Moolah versus Ivory for the women's title. And then you got China versus Jeff Jarrett. You got The Rock versus Davey Boy Smith, probably just a little before he passed away, Davey Boy. Much different. So going back to last night, the show, the first match is this women's match, women's title match. Bianca Belair defending in a triangle match against Becky Lynch and Asuka. And, 3 women that are really at the top of their game. Every time I see Becky Lynch, though, I can't believe that they made this woman a heel. It's just really poor booking. It's really dumb booking. It's to make Becky Lynch, who was probably the most popular performer, male or female, in the WWE 3 years ago or whenever it was, to force feed her to be a heel. It's not working. It hasn't worked. And now it's just like, I don't think she's getting much of a reaction at all, to be honest with you. I think like she's cooled off so much. I don't think she's hot as a heel. I think the fans enjoy seeing her come out, but they don't buy her as a heel. And they don't really want to boo her, but they don't really want to cheer her either. So, I mean, effective WWE, they always find a way to screw up their own toys. The WWE, it's like a child that breaks their own toys, that saves all its money for these wonderful toys and then proceeds to break off their arms and legs. I mean, I don't understand the mentality of the WWE. You know what I mean? And so this was just epitome of that. Well, the match was quite good, Eric. You know, I don't think Eric's watched this thing yet, but the match is quite good. No, spoiler, buddy, but Bianca Belair retained the title. How do I feel about Bianca Belair? She's kind of been growing on me, to be honest with you. But some of the things I take issue, not with her, but the way that she's being told to perform is the skipping and the hair twirling. I get it. Like the hair twirling is part of her gimmick. But, she seems like a little kid who's skipping rope. And I just don't think it's good, to be honest with you, because I think it kind of undermines her abilities that she's coming out there. And yes, she's got a nice smile and a nice booty and all that. But I'd rather see the concentration be on her actual wrestling because she comes out skipping and so forth. I just don't feel like she's a legitimate wrestler. You know what I mean? I feel like she's a kid act, like she's there for the kids. Maybe she is. Bray Wyatt was a huge example, had a push, then pushed back down into obscurity, considering his ancestry. That's right. Barry Windham's nephew, Mike Rotundo's son, Blackjack Mulligan's grandson, brother of Bo Dallas. I think that's about it. Kendall Windham's nephew. I guess you can say that too, for whatever it's worth. It'd be funny if Bray Wyatt started like pushing the Kendall Windham angle, like I'm the nephew of Kendall Windham, But basically, he's actually his real name, Windham Rotundo, named after Barry Windham, which is kind of nice. But what was I saying here, buddy? The women's match was okay. I just feel that Bianca Belair, she's very talented. Somebody put a dream match up on Facebook today in one of the wrestling groups, like wondering what would happen if Bianca Belair fought Jade Cargill from AEW. That's a pretty good match, to be honest with you. And I was kind of looking at Bianca on this match and just looking at her physique, very developed shoulders on this lady. I was wondering how she would match up against China. Now, obviously, Bianca would probably win now because China is a box of bones somewhere in a coffin. But in her prime, China and Bianca would have a good match, I think. And I'm just kind of curious, like, how would Bianca physically match up with China? Because China was in there with the guys. I mean, she was tag teaming with Billy Gunn. Your late friend didn't dig wrestling, yet loved Bray, being a horror movie fan. That makes sense. And I can see Bray Wyatt doing some horror films sometime soon. And shout out to your friend there, Eric. I know what that's like to lose some friends. I've been through that a few times. It's tough. But hopefully he's enjoying the big horror film festival in the sky. But yeah, I mean, I like Bray Wyatt, but he's gone. Blah blah blah. I mean, so many talents that WWE purged itself of last year and the year before. Braun Strowman, Bray Wyatt, etc. We could go on for days. Well, let's see. Going back to Bianca Belair, I think she's good. But she's really marketed and she's designed for the young fans. Trying to get young fans. But for me, I just feel like it's too silly. The skipping, the hair whipping's not as bad because at least that's like a weapon. But just the skipping, nice smile on the lady. But I mean, she just always seems like too happy to be there, and I get it. She is happy to be there, but I just wish they would kind of tone down the aw shucks gee whiz stuff on her, and just let her be an athlete. You know what I mean? But anyway, that's my thoughts. Hey, look, you know what I mean? Other people probably disagree, but that's fine. What else happened on this show, buddy? Just a bunch of matches, to be honest with you. Like a lot of matches. I kind of like Meltzer and Alvarez were saying the whole show could have been on Raw, with the exception of the main event. But some of the stuff that I had to zip through a little bit. This Edge group, Judgment Day, to me, no offense, it's a clear ripoff of House of Black over at AEW. It's gimmick infringement. I'm sure, WWE apologists, idiot McMarks, as I say, will find a reason to excuse it, but it's pretty much gimmick infringement. I mean, it's I think one of the House of Black guys, the Brody King guy, actually retweeted. Somebody had tweeted when you order House of Black on Wish, and they had a picture of Judgment Day, Edge's group, which I think is fair, to be honest with you. I mean, I really do. I think it's just it's a fair thing to say because Judgment Day is just very fabricated. I mean, if anyone's getting something out of it, it seems to be Rhea Ripley. She seems to be at home with it. It might be interesting if they do a thing where she takes over the group from Edge. Damian Priest, I thought, look, I'm not a big fan of Damian Priest. I think he's pretty choppy in the ring. He seems very green and very, like I said, I did a whole video about that choppiness. Not a very fluid guy, not a very smooth performer, wrestler, but he's kind of over somewhat. And when he was the U.S. champion as a babyface, that seemed to be working for whatever it's worth. And now they've just kind of made him a lug, a big lug in Edge's corner. So, and as far as Finn Balor goes, I mean, I'm thinking probably the best thing for Finn is if they were to turn him heel and have him join this group. Got some more comments here. Didn't mean to blow you off there, buddy. Yeah, Rhea Ripley could be a new China at her young age, but it's, what it is, buddy? They don't really promote anybody like they used to, because Vince Jr. McMahon, he got upset with China because she wanted more money. God forbid somebody wants more money. But once they had put her in Playboy and once they had her be the Intercontinental Champion and, having her thumb smashed by Chris Jericho, and once Stephanie started dating her man, so to speak, Triple H, they were done with China. They threw her out like garbage. Priest showed potential in Ring of Honor. Well, I take your word for it, buddy. I guess I wasn't watching Ring of Honor at that time, although I did go to a Ring of Honor show to see one of those Kevin Steen Generico matches up in Boston, and I think the main event that night was Bryan Danielson versus Tyler Black versus somebody else. I think Chris Hero, perhaps, in a three-way match. She's very attractive, buddy. I mean, I'm sure you've seen the pictures of Rhea, 3 or 4 years ago before she had this makeover. And I kind of like that Rhea better, just the all-American, looking like a volleyball player, looking like a college soccer player or something. But, I guess she didn't want to be lumped in with Charlotte Flair. She didn't want to just be another pretty blonde. So she changed her whole look, and here we go. But, yeah, I mean, to me, she kind of looks like the gutter trash you'd see at Spencer Gifts on a Thursday night. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I feel like she's kind of already been a waste of talent in some ways. But, I mean, she is talented, so there you have it. What else? I guess no Miz on this show. Not that I care that much. Whatever happened to that Miz-Logan Paul thing? I mean, at WrestleMania, that seemed to be pretty good. No Mysterios on this show that I remember. You had Happy Corbin versus Madcap Moss, and some type of yeah, it's true, buddy. Hikaru Shida, yeah, she should be used better. That's also true. Wrestlers, that's the thing. You have so many wrestlers, you can't use everybody all the time to their best ability, right? Brian Pillman Jr. could have gotten over by now, but I mean, where's he been? I mean, Julia Hart's more over than he is because now she's in that House of Black. Where's Brian Pillman Jr.? Yeah, I know, buddy. I know Hikaru Shida is pretty, and she's a good wrestler. And I thought Serena Deeb might win that women's title at the AEW Double or Nothing, but she didn't. I think Serena Deeb versus Hikaru Shida for the AEW women's title would be a great feud, but they wanted to keep this title on Thunder Rosa, so it's been kept on Thunder Rosa. What else? So you had Madcap Moss and Baron Corbin. I mean, another match where I had to skim through it a little bit. It does seem like this Riddick Moss, I think he used to be called. He's one of these guys. Kind of remind me a little bit of Pac, the former Neville from the NXT and WWE. Seems like a guy in great condition, could really be an interesting character, could be a great, type of wrestler, upper mid-card guy, but they just saddle him with this comedy feud with a tag team and then a comedy feud with Baron Corbin. Now, look, I've traditionally not thought very much of Baron Corbin. I thought he's just boring, is pretty much what I think of him. But I will give him credit. He has been around now for 5 or 6 years, and he's keeping his job. You know what I mean? So I was quoted by my buddy Jimmy Faluca because someone had put this post up about Michael Cole being with the WWE for like 25 years now or something. And I made a comment that said, just because you've done your job in an average to sub-average manner for a long time doesn't mean you're good at it. It just means you're tenured. That's how I felt about Michael Cole. And that's kind of how I feel about fucking Baron Corbin. You know, like he's going on 5 or 6 years on the main roster, and he's done some interesting things. He's poured dog food on someone and so forth. But do I really feel like he's a great wrestler or someone who I would pay money to see them get their ass kicked? The answer is no. I mean, I don't find him to be that good, Baron Corbin or Michael Cole. Anyway, let's continue with the show. The Hell in a Cell, here we are, folks. The big money match of the night. Seth freaking Rollins against Cody Rhodes. And the word is out that Cody's got a pectoral injury. And boy, did he. I mean, because he took off his robe and you see this horrible chest. And yeah, I mean, look, just because we're wrestling fans and everything's a work, you're kind of wondering, like, is that makeup? Is this, you know, is this really happening? Is this guy with his purple chest? It's all discolored and looking nasty. And is this a really good makeup job for this? But I'll give you the indication that it's not. At the end of the match, when Cody kind of, you know, spoiler, he wins the match. At the end, when Cody is getting his arm raised, you can see like blood vessels popping in live time. Like you can see where it's like really red on his chest. And then a second later, there's more of that redness. So it's like, yeah, it was legit. And he was in there with a torn pectoral muscle. Listening to Alvarez and Meltzer, let's just call him Melvarez from now on. Listening to Alvarez and Meltzer, they basically said it was a torn minor pectoral muscle. The minor pec muscle was torn, and that the idea was, well, it's torn anyway. You're going to have to get a surgery. It doesn't really matter if you have a match. It can't get any worse. Well, and then Meltzer kind of responded to that because that was Alvarez's speculation as to what they were thinking, letting him wrestle. And Meltzer basically said, true, but if you're in there trying to compensate for this injury and do a halfway decent match, you're more likely to get more injured somewhere else on your body, your shoulder, your arm, something like that. You could hurt your neck. I mean, luckily for everybody, and I'm sure Seth and Cody talked to each other and had parameters, what they were willing to do, and some smoke and mirrors for this match, you know, bringing out, bringing out the bull rope with the cowbell. And they had the sledgehammer and doing as much as they could do to tell a story without maiming Cody any further or his life any further. And, you know, behind the scenes that Cody and Seth are the proverbial wrestlers having a beer at the bar afterwards. You know that these guys are pretty much on the same page. They're not looking to hurt each other in real life. Although Seth has done that to a few wrestlers, John Cena included. But I mean, here, Sting, here you see that they were taking care of each other. But still, you know, Meltzer was pretty jazzed up about this. Like, should Cody have even been in the match at all? Where's the doctor's intervention? Where's the promotion's intervention? Where's the common sense? What's the risk gain on him wrestling last night? Yes, but I mean, I'll say this. Where's Roman Reigns in all of this? I mean, if Roman Reigns could get off his couch, couldn't he have come in to defend the title spontaneously against Seth freaking Rollins? It just seemed to me to be a bit like Cody's taking on the pressure of the world, so to speak, because he's basically put in this main event spot. He's 3 months back into the promotion. He just got back at WrestleMania, and he doesn't want to be seen as anything less than a stellar employee. So he's taken on this match, and it's obvious that he shouldn't be in there by any common sense point of view. Just the moving around, you know. I mean, so anyway, but yeah, it was a good story. No blood. I mean, that's the thing with Hell in a Cell now. It's really hard for For someone like myself who's educated in the world of pro wrestling, we've seen Mick Foley get thrown off the top of the Hell in the Cell. We saw the Shawn Michaels um, first Hell in the Cell match with The Undertaker. We've seen so many great Hell in the Cell matches and even Elimination Chambers, which is kind of like the next level to this thing. That now, when they have like this red cell and there's no blood and they don't do anything, it's really hard to compare. I mean, you could compare, but there's no comparison. It's just one era was really like the wrestlers went out there and did everything they could do for the Hell in the Cell matches, and now it's just a very sanitized type of thing. And so when you see ordinary wrestling fans like myself who are kind of pissy about things and wishing things were the way they used to be, this is one of those examples. You know what I mean? And the other thing is, why have a Hell in a Cell network special on or premium event? Why does it have to be on the calendar? You know, back in my day, you would basically book your programs, and then they would have the specialty matches as necessary to work in with the storylines. And only if you had something, you know, like Jake the Snake Roberts versus Sting, a spin the wheel match, or Shawn Michaels versus Undertaker, you need to have a Hell in a Cell. Only when it was warranted do we have these crazy matches. But now they book these crazy matches a year or two in advance in the cities and everything. So they've got to like convolute and put some type of crazy match together to have in that stipulation match. And with Cody and Seth, I mean, just because they wrestled twice, does that really warrant a Hell in the Cell match? So what? You wrestled twice. Who cares? I mean, Mad Dog Mike Messier, I wrestled Kevin Lee Roth twice, okay? But we put us in a Hell in a Cell. So anyway, folks, what did I think overall? Look, you know, you have to judge things now with WWE on a scale. It's obviously not as good as it used to be. And there's really no motivation for them to really do a good show now because they've already got your money. They've got your $10 a month. They've got their deal with NBC, Peacock, streaming platform. They've got their Saudi Arabian investors and all that. So, I mean, they don't really have to do anything. They rest on their laurels. But every once in a while, you see a guy like Cody Rhodes with that AEW integrity coming back to WWE to show them how things are done. He's not taking time off with like Roman Reigns. He's not hiding, okay? He's wrestling. He's not drinking and driving like the Usos. He's out there having a match. So there you effing go. There you fucking go. Overall, I mean, you give the Cody Seth match an A just because of the curiosity factor. Yes, it wasn't anywhere near as good as the other Hell in a Cells, but because of Cody, you have to give him an A. The women's match, maybe a B plus. Really strong women's match, though. I mean, you know, depends on your point of view, but I thought it was really strong. Everything else on the show, and look, I'll be honest, I did skim through some of it, but I really didn't see much else on that show that was so great. But yeah, Cody saved the day, and so I hope that, you know, WWE is appreciating him. Some controversy and that the fans started to cheer, "We want tables, we want tables," and when Seth Rollins got a table out, they chanted, "Thank you, Rollins, thank you, Rollins." You know, Meltzer kind of took that as being an anti-Cody chant. Alvarez said it was more like a pro-table chant. It seemed like a very bloodthirsty crowd in Chicago last night. I mean, my buddy Shane McKenna could attest to that because he was there. But it seems like the fans really wanted some violence. I mean, they were at a show called Hell in a Cell, so I give them no wonder they wanted violence. But overall, I'll give the overall show a C plus, and I'll give the Cody match an A, and the women's tag a women's 3-woman match a B plus, and that was about it. So anyway, folks, for your wrap up here, it's Monday afternoon. The week's just starting. We got the whole week to screw up. I'm giving New Orleans Jazz Fest a B. As far as movies go, wish there was more conflict. I did like the movie, don't get me wrong, but it could have been better. And kind of the same thing with this Hell in a Cell. Could have been better, but, you know, they did get Cody at least. And this Celtics Lakers thing, I think I'm going to officially predict Celtics in 7. Not even the Lakers, Golden State Warriors. It kind of feels like it's a Lakers thing. But I'm going to predict Boston in 7, even though I wouldn't terribly be surprised if Golden State won in 7 or even 6. So there you go, folks. Any other comments, questions, or queries? Get them on. Thanks to my buddy Eric here for chiming in with some nice thoughts. Who is the modern day China, buddy? I think I might have missed this comment. I might have missed this. Was it Bria Presley? Who are you talking about? I don't know who you're talking about, buddy. I was wondering about some of the AEW wrestlers from back in the day, like some of the people that were first started with AEW that kind of fell by the wayside. And there was one lady named was it Bria Priestley or something like that? She kind of came and went. Like she was really good, and she left and hasn't been back. Anyway, I trying to think of who you're talking about here, man, but I don't really know. Now you got me curious about this Teddy Hart thing, but who are you talking about? I don't even know. All right, folks. Well, I guess that's about it. If you could type that in real quick, if you're still around, that's fine. If not, Eric, that's fine. Thanks to those for chiming in. I guess I'll call this a wrap. And have a good week, everybody. Mike Messier. Subscribe to Mike Messier YouTube channel. Of course, as you know, my books are all available online on Amazon. Pro Wrestling Trivia, Wrestling with Sanity comic book, and so on and so forth. Mike Messier. Goodbye.